Thank you very much, Myrna. Our next reader is Michael Andre, a longtime art reviewer, editor of long-running Unmuzzled Ox, and he's written quite a number of books of poems. I think he said there were 20 altogether. Michael Andre.
Hello. Better? Well, anyway, I wrote a poem called It Is It. Should I lift this?
Great.
So I wrote It Is It, a poem, just a poem, in sometime in the early 80s. And the images reminded me of a painter named Brian Busick. I gave the poem to Brian, and he kept doing additions, making them longer and longer, breaking up so one little poem ended up in as a book called It Is It. And I'll skip the prose. Parent. Good afternoon and welcome to the West. This afternoon we will discuss trivia. The Sphinx, in fact, explained himself painstakingly. He wanted people to like him, but he failed to come across. Quadrivium. The stars are not cunning, but they're bright. Without relating the situation to the continental shelf, the well-controlled maniac moves the stars. Baby, you're the lowest. I'm on top like ice on water. I'm the best, just like a cork. Cork. CB. At Citizens Band and Charles Bernstein. CB. Get to work, Charles. Target. This must be opportunity, this anger in the eye of the bull as he charges. To lead, walk backwards. I'm not going to read this, it's too long. It's called Parrot. Maison. I'm a Canadian. Anyway, Maison. Mossy old logs. The pines in the Thousand Islands are weather vanes pointing permanently east. The west wind has prevailed over them. So, early 80s. Oh my God, it's my son.
Oh, son. Yes,
Just in time. Hits. These three, okay. Joey Gallo, Karen Silkwood, Joseph Colombo, Carmine Galante, like in Mom hits. And the last one, the movie Manhattan, it's like a crossword puzzle. And a number of people I know claim to either have been the basis of the characters in Manhattan or it just goes on. Anyway, 6. As Susan Brody says, I do what I want, and if people don't like it, they can go fuck themselves. That's... So, this was a book I published an edition of 1 in 2003. So I don't really know what to read. Let's see. Oh, I know. In 2001, my father died right after 9/11. He died in October of 2001. Elegy for an engineer. The mind with a brain tumor discovers new talents. Unappreciated, they die with this patient. Dying, impatient, and pissed. See you in heaven, I scribble, then fold the pages and place that letter in the drawer of his coffin. Yellow leaves do hang over the open grave. The piper wails. His widow asks his daughter, "Who the hell's that guy with the bagpipe?" After the whirling reception at Queen's, once the friends leave and the flowers start to fade and the widow and the son are lonely again, and what can you say? What can you say about the kindly engineer who loved children because they are so gullible and whose charming, absurd stories I'll never sort from the truth because Dad told me and I loved him. Goodbye. I tried to love you as well as you loved me. Tombstones buried in snow. A storm deflowers the spring. The squirrels, their thermostat set on wake, go back to bed. When the snow succumbs, the melting water will run in dark burbs under the ice. Now the water, as it coagulates, stumbles. Oh my God, here's a different version of the elegy to my father. Oh well. So, a friend of mine, an art critic, died, and I was asked to speak at his funeral. So I started researching his life, and a lot of the things in the New York Times obituary did not appear to be true. So I got into a disagreement with the executor of the will and did not read this at the funeral. And Jude, he was a French-Canadian heritage. And Jude, an indiscreet elegy. You fibbed about your schooling. To me, you told one truth, and thus, when you started seriously dying, you kept me away from your old friends. They hadn't heard that you quit high school to be a copy boy at the Herald Tribune. But I found no byline, though you told stories of Clay Felker. You wrote about art, but lived, you implied, dealing art at Christie's, staked first by gratuities from grateful artists. You did not leave a literary executor. The unpretentious journalists in my family decided when they die, their words too would rest at last and trouble this world no more. Words, for instance, this poem, perish. You are my friend, a non-practicing homosexual. He died a virgin, incredibly enough. Hate the dead. Refute what the bitter heart says, adieu to an art world. I hate Brian Busick and Ray Johnson and you, David Verdun, for dying. Oh, Feast of St. Blaise. He died of esophageal cancer, but he was sure there was something wrong with his heart. So he saw a cardiologist every couple of months. And the cardiologist, he would say, "This is my throat, doctor." And the cardiologist says, "Look, just take lozenges. Let's get back to your..." And then he kept prescribing all these things like that were really, really bad for your esophagus, but okay for your heart. Okay, one last little poem. It's called Shoe. I could not, and now I can't. Try to talk, mouth filled with a sock. Open heart, drive leaf birds apart. Aim only to diaper love, a small part, the infant detail.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was great. And our next reader is Robert Roth, editor, essayist, memoirist. I don't know if he likes to use that word. I think he once talked about the word memoir, and I'm not sure it's his favorite word. But anyway, they seem to be quite popular these days, and he's very good at writing personal reflections on his life and friends. Robert Roth.
Well, thank you so much for putting this together. And Dorothy, in addition to being a magnificent writer, is always so generous to other writers and creating spaces where people have a chance to express themselves. I'm going to start with two very short poems. The first line is in quotation marks. The dawn's early light spreads terror across the globe. The power of our love reclaims the day. Second poem. Where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? On the tip of my nose? No. Under that pile? No. In my pocket? No. In the refrigerator? Yes. No. Somewhere. Where? One hot, humid summer evening, I fell almost unconsciously into a rhythm with a woman walking in front of me. I had somehow stepped inside her aura, yet I was far enough away that I wasn't seen as being with her. I was virtually invisible as we made our way across the sweltering St. Mark's Place, thick with people. The attention, the comments, the hostility, the abuse by the men in the street came raining down on her. Monster faces lurched towards her, howling insults. I had never seen anything quite like it before. It is an experience that women often are subjected to out of the sight and hearing of most men, even men standing nearby. It feels like the comments are almost made on a frequency that only women can hear. Men just hear them when their rights of ownership are challenged. I got a real whiff of being street hassled when I was younger. I had long hair when long hair on men was very rare. I was subjected to abusive and occasionally threatening insults. Once, as I was approaching a construction site, I could see the stupidest look crossing the face of a worker as he spied me a quarter block away. As I got nearer, he yelled from a beam on the third floor some comment about knowing whether I was a man or a woman. Either way, you're not going to get laid, I yelled back. The men working with him broke out in uproarious laughter. The final piece is a piece written by my mother, and it's really one of my favorite pieces. There are a few Hungarian names in here, and I can pronounce them in my brain, but they don't come out quite anywhere near the way they should, so I apologize to my mother, I apologize to anybody who speaks Hungarian. Okay. Two Faces of a Nazi Sympathizer, written by Kato Laszlo Roth. In 1948, when for several weeks I visited my parents in Budapest, Hungary, I had one of the most interesting encounters and experiences of my life. When I met again my former German and art history teacher, Dr. Ilyana Hunvaite. While I had a special aptitude for art history, the German language was very hard to me, and I never mastered it. The other Jewish girls in my class spoke German fluently. I was frightened of Dr. Hanway during my school years. Since I was not very good in the German language, she always drilled me in grammar, while the other Jewish girls had the great privilege to be called upon to recite in German the great accomplishments of Hitler, like building good roads, creating jobs for everyone, stopping the inflation, and others I can't recall. None of Hitler's brutality to non-Aryans was ever mentioned. The Jewish girls show no emotions while reciting, and I was fortunate that I was spared the experience. Actually, all of us Jewish girls were humiliated. I was tortured and put down by the constant drilling of grammar and being an example of stupidity. And others were forced to recite the great accomplishments of our enemy in German. In 1948 in Budapest, after not seeing her for 13 years, I happened to meet Dr. Hanway by chance at the Hotel Gellert's indoor pool. I recognized her immediately and identified myself. I was still a little scared of her. She remembered the class and me and started to tell me how we students were her whole life, how she loved teaching, and how she lost her job. I suspect because of her Nazi sympathies, was ill, had a mastectomy, and that she was totally devastated and unhappy. The fearful figure I remembered before the war became a pitiable figure as we talked on. She saw in me the elegant young woman who came back from America for a visit, not the frightened Jewish girl of the past. As mentioned before, during our talk, the old frightening image of Dr. Hanway melted away, and she became a sad human being who was happy to talk to me, and even in a sort of way had admiration for me, and was glad to remember old times. As far as I was concerned, I felt no victory, only sympathy for her. Her cruelties during the German classes were not as important anymore, and I was sad seeing her soul destroyed. Dr. Hanway taught me between 1931 and 35, and in 1935 I matriculated in German literature among other subjects. In hindsight, I believe, perhaps her human side was revealed in the art history classes, where she inspired all of us. And after many years in America, I finally became an art historian. Dr. Hanway's cruelty and moments of humanity were living proofs of the sum of the many facets of a human being. In this case, two of the many faces of the Nazi sympathizer.
Thank you, Robert, very much. And please welcome Tsaurah Litsky, a very fine writer and very strong reader. Poet and memoir. I don't think she wants to use the word memoir.
I love the word memoir. And the reason I love the word memoir, because it's like the word memory. And without our memories, what would we be? You know, and I thank Dorothy for bringing us together in this bug-infested, but nonetheless beautiful garden. And in preparing for this reading, I started to think about all the poets all over the world, in Bolivia, in Prague, who knows where else, reading for peace today. And I started to think, well, what can I read that will be most universal? What gives us the most peace? Where is peace found, at least sometimes? So I chose this calm poem. I calm, smelling of joy, clean as a pearl, watching Neil Armstrong walk on the moon on TV. I see my future as a series of outer-worldly embraces, imploding, exploding, explosions with near and far galaxies of shimmering skin. I calm, squealing in a bedroom on Avenue D, smoking morning glory seeds mixed with the scrapings from the inside of 2 banana peels. I come through decades marking the assassination of visionaries. I come in years of plague. Even when I practice safe sex, I'm afraid, but I come. I come in melancholy and loneliness, although I may not be coming alone. I come until I start writing poems. I come after I start writing poems. I try not to think about poems when I'm coming, but that's not something I can always control. I come into the first 2 decades, that's here, that's now. I come into the first 2 decades of the first century of a new millennium. I orgasm in times of partial immoral government, faux mass market spirituality, desperate consumer consumption, crippling poverty, intense private despair. I come floating up into the air like a prayer. I come because coming is still a revolutionary act. I'll repeat that line. I come because coming is still a revolutionary act. I come shouting cliches like, give it to me, baby, or give it to me, baby, oh, give it to me, baby. Or I come whispering so low, not even my partner will hear me, the name of a God I profess not to believe in. I come dreaming of world peace, growing rosebuds from my navel. I come riding the A train, covered in good news. I come shitting and pissing. I come because I want to come. I come because you want me to come. I come because I want you to come. I come because I can only go for broke, or I won't come at all. I come playing an imaginary violin, all my strings tight, tuned, and ready. I come for you.
Thank you, Tsaurah. And our next reader is Joanna Sit. Please welcome Joanna.
Thank you, Dorothy, for inviting me to join in this group of lovely poets. And I am going to read a couple of poems, maybe this one, I don't read it. It depends on how slow I go. And I guess in view of what's happening with sexual assault, I never read this poem, but I think that, so I'm going to read this poem about the aftermath of sexual assault or sexual abuse. And just one thing that you ought to know is that I quote a poet, Mike Sweeney, and I stole a line from his really great book called The Octagon. And so I just want to give credit. This poem is called Maybe Also Mercy. And the setting is on a running track on 6th Street, in the East River Park. Maybe also mercy. Every morning when the Chinese man gets within my sight line, I run a little faster to avoid contact, to speed outside the zone, to cut down the time our bodies might be in approximate space. Every time I espy the Panama hat and white guayabera, I flinch no matter how out of breath I am. It's worse when he's on his last 3 laps and walking backwards, because it would mean that I would have to run towards him, and all he has to do is hold out his arms to look like I'm running into his embrace, which won't happen, but I get the creeps anyway, and stare at the tree line, count the number of times I must pass him on the curve, since he's always in lane 6, which is a track of my choice. But I won't concede that point to run on the 5, but get annoyed at his obstruction of my smooth path. I don't ever mind about the old Spanish man who never budges from speed walking on 6, who I also must run around, nor the blonde girl doing the downward dog on the south side curve. To flee from this man who I expect any minute to take out his cigar and take me back on the D train going to Coney Island with his right arm around my waist, his hand in my panties. But like my Sweeney writes, traumas are boring, so I'm going to run from them as fast as I can and forget about the last time I had to identify him in Beth Israel after he died of a ripe old age, tangled in sheets, white like sails. Anyway, I don't ever remember him dead, but alive and walking in that hat and shirt, lurking in grocery store aisles and sauntering on Chinatown streets. So every time I walk past one of him, I look down, away, past, wherever I have to, just like this man who keeps looking at me, and I have that little bit of panic or hesitance that makes me want to stop, which I won't do, and that comforts me even though what happened was long ago. And unlike others, I've never darkened my hours for long with that history. Nothing to profit from except blame. And I've not fallen apart for longer than I had to, even though I suspect there were damages embedded in the days that no one can read, and the books that won't open. Unclosed wounds to pin me to the ground where my every step struggles for air, for a place to hide, to grow forth alone in the hour of a broken clock, to feel a feather's breath brush across my face. But I am here in this morning, under the weight of past circumstances, in a city without memory, trying to shake it free. Sometimes I can listen to my own steps running, guided by what gets spoken in the dark, and much of his music mournful, louder, where the birds are silent on the open river, under the visible morning moon waiting for the wrath that would incinerate the sun. Mostly, I'm here to pray for the small rain to fall from a place between the suspended seconds, the ruffled light that might melt away the burdens of the body's secrets, a place with stars arching over a bridge, where my heart beating hard on the track would finally understand there was never a name on the edge of my tongue or day beyond forgiving. So I'm going to just read one more. And this is in memory of Daddy Chen. I don't know, those of you who live downtown, maybe you have heard of his name. He was a 19-year-old soldier who committed suicide in Afghanistan after some racist hazing. So this is in memory of him, as kind of about him, called Soldier Night. By mountain night moon he reads his future. The distant fire seems close, but he knows it can never be reached in time. That he cannot be saved, that he will dissolve, but his bones, blood, will run towards it anyway, even as all promises multiply, even if they will say he couldn't endure the gravel he had to crawl through, those sharp rocks, those small missiles, daily curse cutting across troposphere, tracking his foreign body, his immigrant scent. There will be no witness except his people's memory, skin torn to mend someone else's universe, to be a man apart, to keep another child safe in nightlights, shapes of seashells or octopi, each bulb an eye in the tip of tapered tentacle, cut like candles that never flicker, never waver until its circuits break, until its flow interrupted, like a life he used to have in a city he used to know. When he was a child who opened his eyes midnight facing east, he's here now, under mountain night stars brimming. He's alone in the tower facing up to the wheel of fire, the magic spokes tangled to varicose madness, and he won't wait for the rose to open, for the gun to weep, and he won't wonder about the boy who lies about the wolf and now lies bleeding in this motherless season. He won't tell anyone when the sky falls down. He won't worry about the wheel of fortune or the sound of the one clapping hand. By the mountain-ice stars, the October silence opens like a door, and he drifts through after fire, water, light. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna Sit. And our next reader is Bill Shunn. Could you please welcome Bill Shunn? Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Dorothy. I'll start with a relatively nice little one. Immortality. I have no illusions of immortality, or do I? The way I shovel known poisons into my mouth, shout motherfucker at drivers who cut me off, the way I still haven't put up the smoke alarms 2 years later, the way I keep putting off Moby Dick, let a day or more sometimes go by without writing a word, the way I, on rare occasions, neglect to say I love you. All right, this one starts with a paragraph from a news article, Life on Earth. A second man pleaded guilty on Thursday to arranging the transport of dozens of immigrants across Texas last year that ended with 10 of them dead or dying in a sweltering tractor trailer in a San Antonio parking lot. Reuters, March 8, 2018. Hell is other people. A swelter of 200 or more packed like Christmas trees in this black rumbling oven. Could be 1,000. Bodies, degrees, take your pick. Jostling molecules struggling to cohere in this boiling plasma. We cluster like penitents at the bullet holes in the siding, each in turn placing lips to stigmata, mouthing our paeans to the great god oxygen. Not prayers for freedom or new lives, but prayers for mere survival, for life. Meanwhile, the captain's bony hand touches shoulder after shoulder, choosing sides for a team no one wants to join. Team no one. You there, on the outside, watching this truck rock on its springs. Don't you come a-knocking. Don't you know you're in here too? Don't you realize the phone call is coming from inside the house? Don't you understand? I'm not afraid to die. I'm only afraid of hell. And we already live there. Maybe another hell poem. Cards on the table. I want to be a rabbit or a dog. Something that doesn't know that anything with a beginning will someday end. I'll pay the bribe. Escort me into the back room. Seat me across from the devil. Deal the cards. He can have my soul. I don't need it. As long as I can have one day longer with you. Escort me back the next night. Double or nothing. Cards on the table, devil. I can do this forever. I like to preface this one by saying I do not own a gun. That's my caveat. Transporter. I place the barrel beneath my jaw and slowly squeeze the trigger. Fireworks erupt from my head. Blue, white, and red, and it's 1975, craning my pipe cleaner neck on a plaid blanket. No whiff of irony from the rockets above. Just my country, right, or place the barrel beneath my jaw and slowly squeeze the trigger. Rainbow confetti erupts from my head. Hats and Hooters, and it's 1994. Scotch and cigars in Salt Lake City with my apostate cousin. Loosh and loaded in an upright town, where the only way out is place the barrel beneath my jaw and slowly squeeze the trigger. Fresh snow erupts from my head. A fantail of frantic white flagging the zigzags of a dog still young enough to lose her mind with joy in this blizzard of 2011. And I plunge beneath the snow to place the barrel beneath my jaw and slowly squeeze the trigger. Mortarboards erupt from my head, every golden tassel a comet's tail, crossing the daylight sky here in 1984, bound for unimaginable frozen darkness before rubber banding back to place the barrel beneath my jaw and slowly squeeze the trigger. Aurora borealis erupts from my head, orgasmic plasma smeared across the night, painting a boat that bobs atop 2017. Is Reykjavik Bay the peak, the one perfect day never to be equaled or exceeded? All else a treacherous downwind run from the barrel beneath my jaw. Slowly squeeze the trigger and I'm back where I started. This lonely, seedy room. I flick the cylinder open, spin it. 5 chambers staring empty like eyes in a skull. 1 round intact. I fling the gun away like a snake. All right, one last little one. Inspired by the news of the past week. Walk a mile. By law, all men should spend time as women, but only a few at a time. Otherwise, who would be left to shame, rape, and kill them? Thank you.